From Arson to Oscar, the rest of the story. Hello, I'm Denver Henderson, the Assistant Director of the Williams County Public Library, with another episode of Oddly Peculiar. Last month, I recounted the story of Kenneth Baxter, executive in Bryan, who married the daughter of Frank Lloyd Wright and became the father of Oscar-winning actress Anne Baxter. However, the story of the Baxter family has another interesting event in its history, and it took place here in Bryan almost 120 years ago. Anne Baxter's great-grandfather was Daniel Baxter. Born in 1840 in Fulton County, Daniel Baxter came to Bryan to seek his fortune. He became an associate of the Bryan Plow Company, and from there entered into the dry goods business with his friend and partner S.M. Gleason. As his fortune grew, he entered banking, becoming a partner in the First National Bank. Considered a prominent and influential citizen, Baxter was elected to the Bryan City Council. He and his wife lived in a large, well-appointed home on West High Street. Mrs. Baxter died on April 27, 1906. Our story begins a few months later. At 1:30 a.m. on August 4, 1906, the Lakeshore train was making its way into Bryan when the engineer noticed a house fire on West High Street. He proceeded to blow his whistle in hopes of rousing the neighborhood. He did waken some people, and the fire was reported, and the blaze was put out after a time. The interior of the house was destroyed. The house belonged to Daniel Baxter. The house was unoccupied at the time, as Baxter had left a week earlier for a fishing trip to St. Ignace, Michigan. One witness claimed that prior to the fire being discovered, a man entered a buggy parked across the street from the residence and left in some haste. Investigation initially concluded that the house had been ransacked and the fire was to cover it up. Baxter had insured the house for $6,000. Converted to today's currency, that's $210,000. Baxter began having the house repaired with an eye to selling it. Two unfortunate things happened. In order to dry some fresh plaster, a contractor started a fire in the furnace that subsequently damaged the house by fire again. 2 months later, a painter fell from a ladder and broke his wrist. This delayed repairs until early the next year. In May of 1907, Daniel Baxter traveled to Detroit to visit his son Charles. He would not return to Bryan for 2 years. The Williams County Grand Jury met in Montpelier on May 20, 1907. The jury heard testimony from Jack Page, a notorious member of the Firebugs, a group of arsonists that were active in Lucas, Fulton, and Williams County for almost 25 years. The 82-year-old Page testified that Daniel Baxter had met him on a dock in Toledo, where he paid him $100 to torch his house in Bryan. Baxter then boarded a boat and headed north for a fishing trip. After this testimony, the grand jury indicted Baxter for arson and issued a warrant for his arrest. However, when informed that he was wanted back in Williams County to answer the indictment, Baxter claimed he had fallen ill and could not leave his son's house. Things were at a bit of a stalemate. The prosecutor for Williams County asked Ohio Governor Andrew Harris for a writ of extradition. To the surprise of all, Harris refused to issue the writ, stating that Baxter wasn't an active fugitive from justice. The prosecutor decided to appeal to Michigan, and in July 1907 asked Governor Fred Warner of Michigan to turn Baxter over to prosecution. Governor Warner refused, stating that he didn't believe the testimony of Jack Page. In the meantime, having been absent from Bryan for over 2 months, Baxter lost his seat on the city council. And this is how things remained. Baxter in Michigan, prosecutors stymied in getting him back. There was one more attempt at extradition in April of 1908, but neither Harris nor Warner agreed. Jack Page, who had been serving a 2-year prison sentence for an unrelated crime, was released in prison in December of that year. On March of 1909, S.M. Gleason, friend and business partner of Daniel Baxter, died. Baxter made it known that he would like to attend the funeral. He received a telegram from the prosecutor that the indictment would be cleared on Monday, March 22nd. Secure in this knowledge, Baxter came back to Bryan. However, when the court met on the 22nd, no action was taken regarding the indictment. As a result, Daniel Baxter was arrested on Tuesday, March 23rd. He was taken to jail but later paid a $1,000 bail. During the proceedings, a statement made by Jack Page was read out to the court. Page recanted his testimony before the grand jury. He said, quote, "I was a sick man when the fire marshals got after me on the Baxter fire. I told them I didn't want to testify. They put one word in my mouth and took out 100. I don't know what I told the grand jury. I was too sick to think. I know that Dan Baxter didn't have anything to do with the fire or any knowledge of it," end quote. He went on to state that the house had been robbed by two of his accomplices, and the fire started to cover it up. Lacking the prime witness to the case, the county had no other recourse but to drop the indictment. Daniel Baxter was a free man. Baxter sold his house in Bryan and moved to Buffalo, New York, where he had friends and business dealings. He came back to Bryan to visit many times. He died Thursday, November 28, 1918, and his body was brought back to Fulton County for burial. As we know, his grandson later married the daughter of America's greatest architect, and his great-granddaughter had a successful acting career, winning an Oscar. But before all that, there was the 3-year saga of arson and accusation. The house still stands on West High Street, looking much the same as it did in the early 20th century. Did Daniel Baxter pay to have his house burned, or was he, as he claimed, an innocent man? We will never know for certain. However, I want to leave you with this. If Daniel Baxter didn't meet Jack Page on that dock in Toledo, how was Page able to tell his accomplices that the house was empty? A small detail that I find oddly peculiar.